Hey everyone, Liam here. Welcome to this week's YouTube video. This week we're going to be going over how to paint a Deathwing Space Marine from the Dark Angels chapter. We are going to be using the dry brush technique for the armor panels. That's because it's very fast and it's very simple to get a really good result for an army, and this is a tabletop video. So as always, if you've got any questions, any feedback, any queries, leave them in the comments below and I will absolutely get back to you. If the video is helpful, hit that like button. Once again, thank you everyone for your support. It means a huge amount. So the model's primed in some kind of brown. I don't know what it is. This model's been sat on my desk for a long time now. What I'd recommend is a nice grey primer. It's very neutral and it's not going to influence the colours you put over the top too much. What I'm doing is, this is Vallejo Game Colour Beasty Brown. This is a great brown for the base colour for Deathwing. The idea with this is this colour is going to sit in all of the recesses and it's going to be your shade colour. Now, what I would say is I don't want to do multiple coats with this. If I'm painting an army, I just want to put one coat down and it's done. So with that in mind, this particular paint is thinned down to 1 part water, 1 part paint. So it's equal parts water to equal parts paint. I want the paint to be as opaque as possible. So while I put it on the model, it covers everything, but it's not going to obscure any of the details. The next paint that I'm going to use is Vallejo Model Color Beige. At this point, I'm switching from Vallejo Game Color to Vallejo Model Color because Vallejo Model Color is far more opaque, covers much faster and better, which means if I'm painting an army of these, I'm going to have to do less coats. And that's really important to me because speed, I'm balancing speed for quality. Now you can still get a great quality, don't get me wrong. So the Vallejo Model Color Beige, you can see on the wet palette, I've added that to the Beasty Brown, so I'm getting a mix in between. I also haven't added any water to this. I do not want this paint to flow. I want to put this paint on the model and it stay in the same place. The only thing that I would say to you is when you put your paint on your brush, in this case, just rub off enough. Don't rub off all of it. You're not doing a traditional dry brush here. You don't want to rub off the majority of the paint. You want to be able to put this brush on the model and you can see the difference that it makes. It's almost like we're just dabbing paint onto the model. And the idea is that basically what's going to happen is all the Beasty Brown that we had, that's going to stay in all the recesses and all the areas that might not receive any light. Once I've covered the whole of this, so you can see that I'm just going over the shield at the moment. Once I've covered the whole of the model, then we're going to move on to using pure Vallejo Model Color Beige. Remember, the idea with this particular layer is I want to cover the whole of the model, the armor, but leave any of the areas that are recessed that we can't really see that much with that nice Vallejo Model Color Beasty Brown, because that is what's going to give us our depth. You can see on screen now I've gone on to the pure Vallejo Model Color Beige. Now this is the actual armor color. This is the color that we should really see when we're looking at these models. This is the Deathwing color. Now with this, I'm picking out areas that are really prominent. What I mean by that is, naturally we still want to keep the Beasty Brown visible in the recesses because that's what's giving us our shade, but we want to keep the beige towards the more prominent parts, like the top of the helmet, the top of the chest plate, the top of the shoulder pads, the top of the shield. So we're still going to have some of that 50-50 Beasty Brown and beige mix, but it's not going to be as important. It's a bit like a bridging color between the Beasty Brown and the beige. This beige is what gives us our Deathwing color, so this needs to be the majority. And you can see the majority of the time what I'm actually doing is stabbing the brush onto the model. Again, this mitigates those streaky marks that you can get from dry brushing. But in this case, it's a bit of a hybrid between stippling and dry brushing, and it's really quite fast. This model took me about an hour. And if you were to do them as a batch, so if you were to paint 10 of them at a time, it'd be much, much faster. So the final stage is we need to put in our highlights. Now, I'm not going to be doing edge highlights on this, but you can if you want. The next step in this case is Vallejo Model Color Ivory. Again, using Vallejo Model Color because it's very opaque. Now we need to be careful with this Ivory because it's very close to white. So the idea with this one is we want to hit the top part of the model. So the head going to be brighter, the top of the peaks of the shoulder pads are going to be brighter, and any edges or areas, surfaces that are facing directly upwards, like the top of the shield, the top of the armor plate that sits on his chest, the top of his chest, top of his knee pad, that sort of stuff. So less is more in this case. This is our final color to make it pop. Ideally, you want it towards the top of the model or anything kind of facing upwards. Now the next steps from here, what you can do if you want, can add a recess wash, pick out the recesses if you so choose, and you can also add some edge highlights. I haven't done that, and the reason being is because by the time we paint on all of the details and get this model looking nice, it's not needed. Remember, the point of this video is for a fast tabletop finish. This armor is good enough. If you want to spend more time doing recess washes and edge highlights, go for it. It will look great, but it's not needed, and it's incredibly slow. It will slow you down. So I've skipped ahead a little bit here, and basically what I've skipped ahead to is I've painted the base colors on for the majority of the details. The colors that I've got down at the moment, the black is all Vallejo model color black, and those black areas are either because I'm going to be painting them brown or there's going to be a metallic over the top. The red that you can see on screen at the moment, Games Workshop Khorne Red. The green is P3 Gnarls Green. Now I do appreciate that I use a lot of different brands. You guys use whatever colors that you want. It really doesn't make any difference whatsoever. Use the colors that you like. Apologies, but shameless plug time. You guys are enjoying this video. If you do want to support the channel, then feel free to check out the links below. If you do want more in-depth video tutorials, if you are interested in tuition, please check out my Patreon. I do teach full-time. And if you're interested in a commission at all, if you want a centerpiece model painted or a custom one-off army, feel free to get in touch. I am currently available. Apologies for the shameless plug. Back to the video. Next up, we're going to keep everything really simple. The Aquila, or whatever it's called, on his chest. I've obviously base coated that with the Gnarls Green from P3, and I'm highlighting each feather with Iosan Green from P3 again. Now, what I would say with this is you don't necessarily need to be too careful with it, because as you can see, I've just put a quick black wash over the top of it, and then that just picks out the recesses. So it's quite a simple thing to do. With the robe at the bottom, I've placed black at the top, and then I've wet blended it with some of the Gnarls Green towards the bottom. So I've got a very fast transition, and it's done very quickly. Wet blending is an amazing army tool. And I'm going to do the same with this shield. See how I place the red towards the bottom? This is Games Workshop Evil Sunz Scarlett towards the bottom, and then towards the top, I'm going to place black. So I've got a solid color of the Evil Sunz Scarlett towards the bottom, and I've got a solid color of Vallejo model color black towards the top. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Khorne Red to bridge those two colors together. So you can see in between these two colors, I'm placing the Khorne Red. And then what I will do to transition those colors together, I'm going to do a wet blend. So when those two colors are both wet on the model, I'm going to mix those two colors at the transition point. If you want more information on how to wet blend properly, there is a really in-depth video on my Patreon. You can also see that I'm going over these areas as well. What I'm doing here is I'm going over those areas of the shield with a thin paint, so that's probably 2 parts water to 1 part paint. Going over the transition areas, and what I'm doing is some of the more dodgy brush marks that I've left from the wet blend, because I've done it very quick, I've just smoothed them out with a thin paint going over the top. And with the shield on his chest, you can see the difference here is I'm glazing with the shield on the chest. So I've just glazed a darker color towards the top, which is the black, and a brighter color towards the bottom, which is the Evil Sunz Scarlett. Now what I would say is I'm doing this very simply and straightforward. This is a tabletop result. It would be really nice if we put some purple or greens into the red and that sort of stuff, but we're looking for something fast here. If we're going to crack out an army of something like these models, then we need to be taking not necessarily shortcuts, but there are lots of cheats that we can do. So you just saw the purple power sword on screen. That was quite a quick process, but I'm not going to show it as part of this video. I'll do a separate video on it so I can go in depth on it properly. Now, the next stage is we're going to start painting in the silver. Now, this really isn't overly complicated. All I'm doing is I'm painting on scale 75 thrash metal. I like scale 75 metallic paints, but you don't need to use them. It's entirely up to you. The idea with this is something like, it's quite a dark, dirty, it's almost like a browny silver. It reminds me of the old bolt gun metal. That's one of the reasons why I like it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover all of the metallic areas that I want. So the shoulder pads, the cross and the shield, that sort of stuff. We're going to cover it all in the silver. And then we're going to do a wash of Agrax Earthshade from GW. And you can see straight away, so remember what I said about the shield looking really naff because it was all messy with the red. As soon as I start covering this cross in that silver, all of a sudden it looks so much better. So we need to remember, just because sometimes when we've been messy and we've got paint everywhere, the result is not really a true reflection. So in this case, as soon as I painted that cross, that red section of the shield looks so much nicer. And I haven't done anything with it. So don't just give up when things are not exactly looking as good as they could. Now, the thing with army painting, obviously it depends on how extreme you want to go with the quality, but what you want to remember, if you're painting an army, you want the prominent features of the model to have the most work put into them. So if you're doing Space Marines, armor is the most important. If you're painting 10 tactical Marines, if you put 80% of your time into painting the armor panels really, really well, no one is really going to focus on how quickly or how poorly you've painted the details, because the armor is what's important. So when you're army painting, remember, pick out the prominent features of the model. So generally speaking, as we're talking about Space Marines here, armor and power weapons and eyes, those are the three that you want to focus on. And that's it. That's the process for painting Deathwing quick and easy. Now, I think the result's really good. I think from an army's perspective, an army of these would look really good on the tabletop. So let me know what you think. Are these videos helpful? These army painting videos, are they going to be useful in the future? Should I do more of them? Give me some feedback, and thanks again.